Let's talk about the Michigan mood tracker. What's the temperature of this fan base right now? Excited, right? Yeah, probably really excited. Of course they are. Think about the past 36 months up there, or 48 months if you really want to go back. We talk about the word can't a lot around here. We talk about people saying things that you cannot do. And for a long time, it was very popular to say Michigan can't win the Big Ten because they can't even beat Ohio State. And now all of a sudden, that's totally inverted. Now Ohio State, they're not even going to go beat Michigan. Ohio State can't win the Big Ten. They can't win a national championship. They're not saying that first part about Michigan. Now that brings me to the second part they are still saying. They are still saying you won't win a playoff game once you get there. And that arrives us at the Michigan mood tracker. First world focus is the Michigan fan base mood right now. You guys are in such rarefied air, places you've never found yourself in the Harbaugh era, places you've never found yourself this millennium until like 5 minutes ago. Do you know what the biggest topic of conversation around Michigan households is right now? Around the water cooler? Around lunch tables? It's how are we going to win a playoff game? You've solved the Ohio State puzzle. Now you know you got to go put it back together every year, but there is no longer this fear of ineptitude, of it not mattering what you do because they've just got our number. No, they don't. You've got theirs. So if anything, you just expect a competitive game, and then your way and your philosophy and your approach and your development, it's going to beat them, even if you haven't out-recruited them, although that may be changing too. You got that part of it figured out. You got the Big Ten championship thing figured out. You know how to do that stuff. It's the playoff. That's what you got to figure out. How do we win a playoff game? These are first world problems. It's a very first world focus. And it's a good place to be. Really good place to be. Because number one, you're still hungry because you haven't gotten to the mountaintop, but you have just loaded up on appetizers. So you got the main course still out there somewhere, but you're not hungry. Well, you're not going to starve. You're still hungry, but you're not going to starve. It's a great place to be. It's a great middle ground. They got a weak schedule. It's not something I blame Michigan for, kind of like I said with Georgia. It just is what it is. They've got a weak schedule. They play East Carolina to start, then UNLV, then Bowling Green, then the opening is Rutgers. It's not a murderer's row. Unlike last year, we're not really talking about figuring out a quarterback situation or anything like that. We know who the man is up there. They are number 5 in returning production. A lot of the pieces you're familiar with are back. They have probably got the best running back tandem in the country. Although I will get some fight out of some folks about that. Whatever. They've got one of the best. I'd rank them number 1. So I'll say that much. They added a good portal class. It's not ranked number 1 because they didn't need it to be ranked number 1, but they sprinkled some really good pieces in from the portal. Their over-under preseason win total is 10.5. They are plus 175 to win the Big Ten. That is the best odds in the Big Ten to win the conference. They are plus 800 to win the college football playoff championship. So they've got the third best odds to win the national championship. It used to be that Michigan, their odds were so disproportionately off because it was correlated with the fact that odds makers didn't think they could beat Ohio State. And so even if we think they've got a good team, if they can't beat Ohio State, we're not going to give them any kind of decent odds to win the national championship. Success is not a continuum, though. This is the one thing I always come back to. So there's this thought sometimes that, okay, you make some progress in 2022, and then we beat Ohio State, and we win the Big Ten, and we get to the playoff again, and we don't win again. And there's this thought that, okay, that's where we'll pick up next year. No, you pick up 0 and 0, and you got to start all over again. You can apply the lessons, and some of the same pieces are back. And sure, the things that worked last year will probably continue to work, and maybe you even learn some lessons from the things that didn't work. But you still put yourself in the minefield. You could still have injury. You could still have bounces of ball go against you. The other teams could get better. Someone could have hired the guy that's the magic elixir or your kryptonite or whatever you want to call it. All kinds of different variables are out there. So success is not a continuum. It doesn't just keep happening. You don't just get to keep picking up where you left off. But Michigan does not feel like a program right now that is prone to great spikes in production. It does not feel like a team that's going to win 10 one year and 6 the next year. whatever they figured out up there, they figured it out, and it's really, really rock solid. So there's a big difference, obviously, in beating Ohio State versus not beating them. And there's a big difference in winning the Big Ten versus not winning the Big Ten. But I do not think they're going to fall off a cliff or anything like that. That's, to me, with this kind of team, that's out of the cards. We're talking about small margins of difference between success and failure here. But even failure is probably not far below that 10.5 threshold. I am still amazed while I'm speaking about that. I am still amazed that they turned this thing around with no change at the top. I mean, I know it feels like a long time ago, guys, but if you're not a Michigan fan, forget being a Michigan fan. If you're not a Michigan fan, if you're a Wisconsin fan, but you observe the program and you play them a lot, didn't you think for a little while if they were ever going to ascend to the top of the conference, if they were ever going to supplant Ohio State as the perceived top dog in the conference, didn't you think at certain points it was going to be with someone other than Jim Harbaugh? Because I did. Like, I got myself into that mentality. And they did not make a change at head coach. And even the head coach himself explored the NFL a couple of times. And even with all that, even while interviewing for the Vikings job on National Signing Day, all of these things should have thrown the program into a tailspin. It got better. They figured it out. Took a long time. Took a little bit longer than maybe you guys wanted. But they figured it out, kept tinkering, kept adjusting, just fractions of an inch, not miles, just fractions of an inch. And I know it gets so boring and so cliched because so many people say it, but if you'll just keep chopping, if you'll just stay committed to your process, you'll bore a lot of people talking about it. But man, if they give you enough time, if your employer gives you enough time and your process is sound, it's crazy what happens. Because Jim Harbaugh is at Michigan, and you got Urban Meyer at Ohio State. He could never have known what was going to happen, but he kept chopping. He never beat Urban Meyer. Kept chopping, though. That's out of his control. Kept chopping. And now Michigan, at least for the time being, is on top of the Big Ten. Over under preseason win total, 10.5. Favorites to win the Big Ten. Favorite to go to the playoff again. And they're just the same dude. It's just Jim Harbaugh. So, yeah, they got first world problems up there, and they got a first world focus. That is the mood right now for the Michigan fan base.